Hello folks and welcome to my factory. Today's doll is not actually completely new. If you follow me on my socials, you've probably seen pictures of that face last fall. That was the first face-up that I did for the Dancer of the Boreal Valley doll, one that I elected not to use because I decided to shrink the doll's head. I did not wipe her off though, and I kept her on the side until I could get back to her, and the day has come. I decided to try my hand at a period-inspired dress. I am not recreating anything from a specific period though, so I'm mostly going for the shapes and ideas that inspires me as I went along on the project. I chose the fabric first, mainly because I wanted something romantic and I liked that one. These are scraps that I had been donated by some friends of mine. If you know me as an artist a little bit, well, you already know that I actually do not know much about sewing and I'm basically winging it each time. And well, so fair warning for the connoisseurs out there. I'm just doing what I think makes sense. Before going in deeper in the video though, I want to take a moment to thank you all for the overwhelming amount of support that I received in my last video. It was really a hard one to make, and honestly I hesitated to publish it until the last minute, and it meant a lot for me to know that it touched other people as well. I think most of us, if not all of us, have struggled those last couple of years, and it's perfectly okay to talk about it. I am not trying to be nice or to play role models. I just think the best approach for me is to be honest and open. My art is honestly connected to something very deep and personal most of the time, so might as well embrace it. If you wonder why the top part of the dress here is a little too large in the back, well, you'd be right. I made that on purpose so I could gather it if I say it like that, but before that I should really have started to work on the clothes that go under. Well, I should have started with that actually, but I was a bit too impatient to try working with this fabric. I added some lace trims around the edges to try to not only add more details and texture, but also to make my life a bit easier. That fabric was pretty thick and I wanted to avoid folding seams as much as I can. So this is the finished top, and I left out the threads that I used to gather the back hanging free. That's because I will only lock that into place once I am done and ready to add this part permanently on the doll. I also decided to gather part of the sleeves too, just to add to the silhouette and to make sure that we could see the ends poking through. For the top of the dress worn under, I wanted to do something simple and elegant, so I simply made a tube top and gathered it. I was already planning to sew the finished garment directly on the doll's body, so I allowed myself to work a little faster and tighter with it. The skirt was extremely simple as well, mainly limited by the shape and amount of the flowery fabric that I had. I made it with 2 rectangles of fabric, and instead of loosely gathering them, I carefully pleated them to make sure the folds, well, they were well spaced out and exactly where I wanted them to be. To protect the edges, and since again that particular fabric is very thick, I carefully coated the perimeter with some fray check fabric glue. Once that was done and dry, I could finally sew a trim of lace where the hem would be to match it with the top of the dress. After assembling the 2 layers of the skirt together, I added the tube top, and at this stage I started sewing the outfit directly on the doll's body. At this point I also decided to add a corset to help the overall look. As the base for it, like usual, I used some craft foam. I simply covered it with black fabric using Mod Podge as a glue. Then, as I do it often, I started sewing some details on with the thread and, well, directly with the thread and needle. With the fabric glued on, it made the foam surprisingly sturdy, so I was not worried about poking holes. Now that the main body of the dress is complete, I could add the top part on it and wiggling it to center it and also locking the gathering in the back in place. Seeing that many dresses of that style seem to have some kind of belt, I added a ribbon in the front though. I ended up removing it at the end because I thought it contrasted a bit too brightly and it felt, I don't know, it felt too much. One thing though that I was not ready to compromise on was roses. I wanted her to be covered in roses, maybe as if they grew on her or something. As for the shoes, these felt right to me, so I simply repainted them to fit them with the whole color story. I took Spectra's arms out. She has a transparent forearms and hands, and I wanted to give them a coat of acrylics to make them opaque, just like the rest of her body. I also decided to try to lightly customize those chains she has on her hands to make them look like jewels. These are the finished shoes and hands, and then I decided to paint a little plastic purse to go with everything as well. Though I did end up adding a bit of blushing to the hands and also to the wrists, but I did that off camera. With all the accessories and some roses sewn on, this is how the body looks like. I even added ribbons to the sleeve, but like with the belt, I ended up removing those a bit later on. They don't look bad, but I felt like it was a little too intense. I was also able to put together a tiny rose that she could hold in her hand. The last big thing I wanted for her look was a hat. And I made this one very similarly to how I made the corset. I cut the shapes that I wanted in craft foam first, and then I used Mod Podge to glue some fabric on them. Once everything was dry, I sewed the lace trim around the edge, though I would later use hot glue to put the pieces back together. Then I finished decorating the hat with a simple white ribbon and a paper rose. Her face was done already and I sadly don't have any footage for it, but I did ended up retouching it. I primed her face with a fresh coat of Mr. Super Clear Sealant, then I carefully drew baby hairs around the hairline. I painted them in with gouache paints then. Using more gouache, I accentuated her lower lashes. She really did not need those, but I didn't like the ones that she had before, and at this point in the face-up, I could only add and not remove. I still like the result a lot though. I used a mix of watered-down watercolor and gouache paints to paint a subtle texture on her face, a bit like freckles. I used both a cotton swab and my fingers to spread and dull the paint in some areas. And that is the finished result. I did not give her a name aside from the Lady of Roses. I am currently unsure if I want to sell or keep her, but I am still open to offers if you want to slide into my DMs. Overall, I am very happy to have finished her, and I hope you like the results too. My next video might be a bigger one, so I think having this one in between is gonna be a breath of fresh air. As for now, folks, this is goodbye, though we'll see each other again soon. In the meantime though, please, stay safe.